Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 13-game Major League Baseball slate that starts at 7 o'clock Eastern. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also check the Discord links below and also the Patreon links below. I did a write-up for today, which is free, available on Patreon today, so check that out. That will also give you a good breakdown of all my pitching breakdowns. With that said, let's get into the slate here. My core plays are Contreras for Milwaukee, Gurriel Jr. for Arizona, and Acuna for Atlanta. We'll get into those in a minute. First, we'll start with our pitchers. I have 4 P1 pitchers today. Shane McClanahan, Joe Ryan, Zach Gallen, and Logan Gilbert. I also have 3 P1/P2 options in Kodai Senga, Bryce Elder, and Luis Goelito. And then for our P2 options, we have Nestor Cortez, Tony Gonsolin, Miles Mikolas, and Brian Bello. So if you jump onto Patreon today, it is free today. You can see a complete breakdown of all the pitchers and what I think about each individual one. But my top options are McClanahan, Ryan, Gallen, Gilbert, Elder, and Bello. So do keep those in mind. Let's go ahead and get into our catchers today. We're going to start at the top here with William Contreras for Milwaukee. He is the top option on this slate. He is hitting the ball pretty solid this season. He's had some home runs in the last few games. He did start the season off rather slow from that perspective. His price is too cheap here. The metrics are off the charts, and he is just a little bit underpriced for this particular situation. Then we'll look at Will Smith for the Dodgers. He has some really good upside in this matchup. This is a good situation for him with incredible metrics. He is pretty expensive, so he will be a little bit harder to roster, but he's definitely in play on the slate. Then we'll look at Gabriel Mariano for Arizona. I do like Arizona today, and he has the best WOBA of all catchers today in this matchup. He has home run potential as well. He is hitting the ball pretty decently, and I like his upside here and good for fantasy point output. And then we'll look at Patrick Bailey as a kind of a Hail Mary play for San Francisco. He's only played in a handful of games so far, but he's hit the ball really well. He's got home run potential, and he looks like he's going to probably draw another start today with his solid metrics and upside, though he is somewhat of a Hail Mary approach to this position. As for the catching position in general, you can take your pick of value plays. There are plenty here to choose from. I say it's good to go cheap here because there's plenty of home run potential available at cheap prices. You can also consider Yasmani Grandal, Adley Rutschman, Jake Rogers, Blake Sabal, Sean Murphy, and Eric Haas here at this position. Moving into the first base, we're going to start with Freddie Freeman, who has really good metrics for this matchup. He has been mashing 12 fantasy points per game over the last 10. He's got the highest WOBA on the slate for this position. He is priced up, but he definitely is a viable option on this one. Then we'll look at Josh Naylor for Cleveland. Now, he is cheap and underpriced here. His metrics are jumping off the charts, and he's got cheap upside, which gives him some really good opportunity as a value play. His betting average obviously hasn't been great, but he definitely has home run potential today. Then we'll look at Christian Walker, who's a little bit overpriced here for Arizona, but he does have a great matchup here with very good metrics, and I like his home run potential in this particular matchup, despite the fact he hasn't been hitting the ball all that great the last few games. And then for Hail Mary play at this position is Darren Ruff, who has only played in a handful of games so far this season, and he hasn't really had a big game yet, but he definitely draws the best metrics he's had on the season so far in this matchup, and he will hit a home run eventually likely, and he's got some good utility here in this position as a Hail Mary approach with being super cheap. As for first base, there's plenty to like here across the price rangers. I would kind of look at who you think your top stack is going to be and kind of roll with whoever the first baseman is from that game, because we have a lot of good options here. Also consider Vlad Jr., Paul Goldschmidt, Brandon Belt, Pete Alonso, Yandy Diaz, Lamont Wade Jr., and Andrew Vaughn at this position. Moving into second base, we're going to start with Ketel Marte for Arizona. He's very priced up, but his metrics are very off the charts today. He's been hitting decently well lately, and he has home run potential as well. He has had hits in quite a few games in a row now, since I think the 20th, so I like his upside here, and he draws great metrics for this matchup. Ozzy Albies is also in play for Atlanta. Now, he hasn't hit a home run in a while, and he is somewhat due, but he definitely has great metrics for this matchup. Probably one of the best matchup metrics he's had in quite a few games, and I like his upside here. He's also hitting the ball a little bit better the last few games as well, so I like his potential here against subpar pitching. And then a value play here is Julian for Minnesota. Now, he's a little bit of a contrarian play here as he's kind of hit or miss. I almost made him a Hail Mary call, but I think he's good enough to be a value play here. He has risk, but the metrics are very high, and he's been scoring fantasy points in most games. Minnesota is a sneaky team today, so I like his upside here. As for this position, there is a lack of home run potential at this position, which is concerning with most of the good players being fairly expensive. But there are a couple of value punts to consider, and other considerable options are Hanser Alberto, Mookie Betts, Brandon Lowe, Jonathan India, and Emmanuel Valdez. So do keep those guys in mind. Moving into third base here, we're going to start with Rafael Devers, and he obviously draws some really good upside and high potential here, and with home run potential, in fact, though he's not hitting the ball well this season, and that is a huge concern. His metrics are as good for this game as they have been all season, though, so he definitely draws some interest here from me, but again, he still feels high risk, high reward. Austin Riley is a good alternative to him. He's hitting the ball really well lately. He has just as much upside, and I do like his potential, despite the fact he's been up and down throughout the season. He's been getting hits in every game since the 17th, so his metrics here are off the charts, and he feels a lot safer than Devers. And then I have a few value plays to talk about here. Rivera for Arizona has been really good the last few games. He's hitting the ball pretty well so far this season. This is a prime matchup for him, and I like his upside. I also like Longoria, his teammate, at the same position. Whoever draws a start is definitely in play to me, though he is a little bit riskier as his batting average hasn't been quite as good, but the metrics are just as good as Riviera today. And then finally, Jake Berger for Chicago White Sox. This matchup is not super perfect, but certain options on this White Sox team are going to be viable today, and he's got the most WOBA and ISO for the position. He also draws a free score here versus subpar pitching, so I really like his upside. As for third base, there are good value and good expensive plays here. If you pay up at pitcher, I go a little bit cheaper here, but if you pay down some, I would go for more home run hitting type situations like with Riley or Berger. So also consider Hanser Alberto, J.D. Davis, Gunnar Henderson, and Justin Turner at this position. Moving into shortstop, we're going to start with Wander Franco here for Tampa Bay. Now he has been had put together a string of good games lately. I like his potential and upside, and he draws a great matchup here. Then we'll look at Matt McClain for Cincinnati. Now, he seems somewhat risky against Bello, but he is hitting the ball extremely well. He's no longer sneaky, and his price has come up a lot, but he definitely draws some utility here, and his WOBA is off the charts for this particular matchup. Then we'll look at Tim Anderson for Chicago White Sox. I really like his upside today, though he hasn't been scoring a ton lately, which is a little bit of a concern, but he's had some good games, and he has good potential to get on base and get some good opportunity. Then we'll look at Javier Baez, who feels very overpriced. Where is he? Javier. Sorry. I don't need Javier Baez here. I'm sorry. I don't know why I included Detroit on some of these. So, sorry about that, guys. But as for a shortstop position, it feels like it's a near requirement to pay up at this position. It feels rough for a position that doesn't produce many home runs either, but I do think that the top options do have that potential. You can also consider Corey Seager, Royce Lewis, and Carlos Correa at this position. Moving into the outfielders, we are going to start with Ronald Acuna, who absolutely has great metrics for this matchup. He didn't have a good game yesterday, but he also didn't strike out, and he hasn't been striking out much. His batting average is off the charts. He has home run potential every time up. He has stolen base potential every time he gets on base. I like his upside, and this is a great matchup with great metrics. He's the top projected player on the slate for me. I think he's just a top-tier option. Then we'll look at Gurriel Jr. for Arizona. He also is priced pretty fairly here. He's hitting the ball really well lately and all season long, in fact. He's got a great matchup here, and he just seems like a solid play at a pretty decent price. Then we'll look at Luis Robert Jr. Now, if you like the Chicago White Sox stack today, he's definitely in play with his home run prowess lately. Though he isn't hitting the ball particularly great in the last few games, he has some nice upside with the home run potential, and I do think the Chicago White Sox will have a decent game here. Looking at Luke Fraley, he seems overpriced despite the fact that he has good metrics and good potential here. He definitely draws home run upside, but he does feel a little bit risky due to his price, but he's a good alternative contrarian play at this position. Then we'll look at TJ Friedl, who also draws great metrics for this matchup. I like his upside, and he's hitting the ball really well lately, so I think he draws him some interesting potential, but he does feel like he's a little bit risky. Then we'll look at Varsho for Toronto, who hasn't been he has been up and down throughout the season. He does seem like he's starting to hit the ball a little bit better lately, and so I do like his upside and home run potential in this matchup. Then we'll look at Mike Yastrzemski for San Francisco. Yaz looks like a really good option on the slate. He's hitting the ball pretty solidly, and if you like San Francisco today, then he's definitely somebody that you should have in your lineup. And then if you like them as well, Conforto is also playing extremely well. I like his potential here, and he has got home run metrics for this particular matchup. Very similar to Yaz on this case. You could even go with a two-person San Francisco stack in the outfield position. Moving for the outfield position is a very deep position usually. I do feel like it's mostly overpriced today, though, but there's plenty of good options to consider, including Toscar Hernandez, Kyle Schwarber, Joey Wiemer, Brandon Nimmo, Josh Lowe, Tommy Pham, Jack Sawinski, JD Martinez, Alex Verdugo, and George Springer. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.